One of my favorite blog posts is on the avc.com blog, and it came out in 2010. It's called What a CEO Does. This is on Fred Wilson's blog. And in this blog post, it's pretty short, but it's incredibly powerful. In this blog post, Fred Wilson describes being on a board with another VC and a search that board was doing for a CEO of a portfolio company, right? They were looking to hire a new CEO. And Fred, I think he was a junior VC at that time, certainly didn't have the experience that he has now. But Fred turned to the more experienced VC, as described in this blog post, and said, like, what does a CEO do? Right? We're looking to hire this position. What is important? What is it? What are the foundational aspects of this person's job that we're hiring for? And as Fred tells the story, the senior VC on the board replied or answered without thinking. He said, a CEO only does three things. Oh, that's my wife calling. I'll call her right back. So Fred responded that a CEO does three things. One, sets the overall vision and strategy for the company and communicates it to all stakeholders. Two, recruits, hires, and retains the very best talent for the company. And three, make sure there's always enough cash in the bank. And in the story, Fred said, is that really it? And the senior VC said that the CEO should be delegating everything else in the business. So I think that's right. I really agree with this. So there's three jobs: make sure there's money in the bank, make sure that the company is making good hires, and three, communicates the vision, right? Investors, employees, customers, the market, etcetera. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And I really think that of those three things, communicating the vision is the most important one. Because when you communicate the vision frequently and perhaps in a one-to-many fashion, right, through blog posts, through podcasts, through all hands meetings to the company, when you tell lots of stories, you'll make good hires. You really will. At least it helps a lot when you're making good hires. Especially if a lot of the communicating the vision is also to the, to the press, if you can get it. So you'll make good hires, and you'll tend to have money in the bank, right? Because customers will listen to this. Our customers will listen to the communication of the vision. So I think kind of at the top of the food chain, this 3-item food chain, is communicating the vision. So something I've been doing 5 days a week, I try and do it every weekday, but sometimes in order to hit my number here, I got to do it on the weekends. But something I've been doing is sending a daily audio note to the company about different things that are going on. And I call it the B-cast. And I have a channel that it goes out on. And I think that's been really helpful. I've gotten some good feedback on it. But I think it's always important for CEOs to be communicating. That's part of why I do this podcast every day. It's part of why I do the daily quote unquote podcast to the company. It's not really a podcast, but it's important. And I've seen this trend recently. It's not recent. I've seen this trend for a long time of CEOs as maybe general commentators for the industry that they're in. So they'll do a lot of thought leadership, generally on topics in this space. And I think that's where a lot of CEOs and a lot of companies go wrong. For example, if you're a company that creates HR software, I think it's generally a mistake for that CEO or for that business to do a lot of speaking or a lot of writing about the industry, about what makes a great HR team, about just very general, broad stroke topics in the space. What I've seen work the best is when that CEO is constantly and almost exclusively speaking to the vision behind the business, right? Or the vision behind the product. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why is it important? And there's a variety of reasons for this. Certainly when it comes to marketing, and again, this mistake that I see startups and companies make all the time of, creating a blog and they just write a bunch of general articles about the space that everyone else is writing. I think they miss out on the opportunity to involve the market or employees or customers or the press in the specifics of what they're building. Like, for the most part, again, if you're a product company, your market wants to hear about your product. They want to see screenshots. They want to see features. They want to hear about the big why. They want to hear about the big vision. And the general topics are often not so important, right? The sort of the general ideas are not as important. And that's something that I strive for. We're still in a phase where I think the heart of what we're doing, that part is still in stealth mode. Like, we're not ready to talk about it just yet. And I think it's going to become apparent over time. And when we do feel like we're out of stealth mode on the bigger vision behind what we're doing, I'm going to talk about it a lot more. But certainly within the company, I talk about it all day long. And even when we go about hiring, I talk about the bigger vision and the product and the features and sort of the nitty gritty of our specific take on the world. I talk about that all the time. But it's really a hard skill to master, and communicating incessantly takes a lot of energy and a lot of work and a lot of putting yourself out there. And often, perhaps even most of the time, what you're communicating isn't completely satisfying to everyone who's receiving it. I definitely think that the hardest people to communicate to are the employees of a company, right? Because they've heard the big picture vision. That's not new and exciting to them. That's why they joined in the first place. That's why they're with you. So they're looking for a constant stream of insight and vision and opportunity, and how what they're doing every day maps onto the big picture. They want quarterly plans. They want to know their priorities. And it's not just about spelling these things out. It's about inspiring while you're doing these things. It's about, it's about inspiring, and it's about providing answers that aren't just intellectually interesting or make sense on paper, but answers that feel satisfying to a variety of people. And something that I've definitely struggled with is putting a lot of effort into communicating the vision and communicating what's happening, only to hear, people I work with say, great, so like, what's the really big picture? What's the big picture? What's actually the big picture? And I used to struggle with this in a past life. And the conclusion that I came to isn't always that I was doing a bad job. Sometimes I was doing a bad job. But the conclusion that I came to was that people want to hear the vision told in multiple ways. They want to hear it from multiple vantage points. They want to hear it from the perspective of different customers and different people, and people who are considering the product, people who've bought the product, people who've, consider the product and didn't buy, people that consider the product and did buy, customers who've been there for a long time, customers who have been there for a long time and left, customers that have been there for a long time and referred others, right? There's so many different viewpoints and perspectives on what a business is doing. And it's not about saying it once and creating this concrete, ossified monolith of a document that outlines what you're doing. It's about the nuance and the evolution and the different takes and the new insights and the subtleties and all these little details and stories and case studies that bring what you do to life. So part of it is the top-down planning, but part of it is the view from the trenches, from a variety of perspectives, and the evolution of that over time, right? The deepening of the vision over time. And all that's important. And it's hard to do, and it's a never-ending job. And CEOs or any entrepreneurs that are running a business, I think, always have to choose between, are you going to be outward facing and always speaking to the market and evolving the ideas to the market? Or are you going to do this internally? And are you going to do it in investors? And the truth is you have to do all three and you need to change your priorities over time. There's no one right answer there. Anyway, I think I'm going to title this post Chief Communication Officer because probably above everything else, I think that's what a good founder and a good CEO at any company does, right? They tell stories. And then they create big picture, satisfying reference documents that people can return to over and over and over again. And then from that, they create metrics that businesses use to judge themselves, and blog posts and podcasts and all these things. I think it's important. All right. Take care. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked this content, please help me out by leaving a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It provides me with encouragement and it helps other people find the program. Also, if you have a question that you'd like me to answer on the podcast, go to asknomics.com, leave me a question, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next few days. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.